So just before we start this podcast, I'd like to say a huge thanks again to Mark Pitcher at smashthebox.me. Mark has been a long-time friend and also been on the podcast to tell his story about leaving corporate life and following his dream and his purpose, which has been Smash the Box. Smash the Box is a new way for you to train, motivate and inspire your staff. So by hiring Mark, you'll be improving your culture and really giving back something to your teams that will help them in their daily roles and their daily life. Mark has a really refreshing approach in terms of how people can actually find their purpose, their personal purpose and their business purpose. And it will make your culture a much stronger and much more aerodynamic organisation. You can experience Smash the Box in 3 ways. You can have a workshop with Mark who can train your GMs and your AGMs, etc., all the way through to your rising stars and teach them things like how to become an amazing leader, how to find purpose and fulfillment in the work, and also the power of positivity, all about that positive mental attitude. You can also get one-to-one coaching with Mark, whether you're an executive or for your teams, and again, really helping light that inner spark that's in all of us. Also, Mark is an amazing keynote speaker, whether you'd like to get him for your event. He's also an amazing warm-up act for any cold rooms that's maybe about to get serious, but also a great keynote speaker in his own right for you to hire him to come in and inspire all of your teams and colleagues. You can get a taster of Mark every single morning on Smash the Box Facebook Live. That's 7:45 every single morning on Facebook. Mark has a daily morning dose of inspiration for everyone, and he's building quite a sizable positive community on there. Definitely try and check that out. Also, please do get in touch with Mark at smashthebox.me or follow Mark Pitcher and Smash the Box on LinkedIn. From We Are Spectacular, this is a Spectacular Marketing Podcast, a podcast about everything brand, marketing, digital and social for the food, drink and hospitality industry and beyond. So today, as I was making my way into the podcast, I've visited both Leon and Pret on Tottenham Court Road, and it always just strikes me the wonderful people that are working in these organisations that lift our day, give us what we need and just treat us with great respect in terms of serving us and helping us get what we need to get for us to then be fueled or fulfilled or just a moment of peace to then get on with our day, whatever we're doing in life. Someone that's key to driving that industry and driving all of us in terms of the hospitality industry is Kate Nicholls. Kate is the CEO of UKHospitality, which was formerly known as the ALMR. Most of you will probably know Kate, but if you don't, she's an incredible advocate for our industry and is lobbying at all levels in terms of media and government to really help us have a powerful voice and have a seat at the table and get the respect that we deserve in terms of being one of the biggest growth factors in our economy. UKHospitality also is an incredible organisation, and the team work tirelessly to help break perceptions in terms of hospitality being a great career for anyone, and also really lobby at government level through the media to make sure that we're always front of mind when they're making key decisions in terms of legislation that could affect our people, our products, our customers and our businesses. Really excited about seeing Kate today. It's an area that I don't delve into much in terms of politics and lobbying and Brexit and all these things, but I think it will be a real education for all of us to hear what's going on at the sharp end of all of this, how it affects us and how we can all get together to make sure that we all have the fair deal and the businesses that we all deserve. It gives me the most incredible pleasure ever to be sat in UKHospitality royalty, I think. So with me, I have got Kate Nicholls.
No pressure then. I've got to live up to that.
I was like a big start.
Yeah.
So I think actually, something I've thought about you when we always meet, I think, you've got such a huge weight on your shoulders and responsibility in terms of being this, mouthpiece and champion and advocate of our industry, and just never-endingly, unceasingly knocking on the door of media and government to give us that voice and place at the top table.
I prefer to see it as a privilege and an honour,
yes.
Rather than a weight and a privilege. I don't feel sort of weighed down. It really is. I mean, it's such a fantastic industry, and I'm so passionate about it. And I've worked in it just over 25 years, and it's given me a fantastic career and opportunity. So I'm passionate about giving back and making sure it gets the recognition it deserves.
Yeah.
And crucially, it's not just the sector and some amorphous mass or big business. It's the people who work in it. Yeah. So you've got just over 3 million people work in our sector, and they are fantastic, and they're the backbone of our industry.
Yeah.
And they deserve some respect, and they deserve credit for what they do. Yeah. Because without them, the British economy grinds to a halt, effectively. Yeah. Not just because of the jobs we create and the value we bring, but the City of London wouldn't function and get very far if it didn't have its early morning cup of coffee, or its lunch, or its dinner, or its drinks in the evening. That's what gives us our social capital. So I sort of see it as a bit of a crusade.
Yeah.
And a movement rather than a sort of job.
Yeah. I mean, you can see that. And I think a lot of us are just kind of looking in awe to, sort of send you off to 10 Downing Street to say, we're right behind you.
But that's what gives me the power, because I'm not just one person. I have a team, obviously, at UKHospitality, but we have 700 member companies. So that's who I'm representing, and that's who's standing behind me. That's what gives me the power when I talk to government, actually, is for me to say, it's not just me saying this. This is the voice of the collective wisdom of all of these fantastic CEOs and all the people within it. And when we're talking about employment issues, which so often we are at the moment with government, then it is about the rights, obligations, responsibilities that you have towards 3 million people who work in the sector. And that's where, the leverage we've had and the profile we've been able to generate since we came together as UK Hospitality as one voice comes from the fact that you've got everybody in the industry in the same place. So, government previously has always been able to say to one or other of the bodies, well, you don't represent this big company, or you don't represent that, or you're missing hotels, or you're missing restaurants. Having everybody across the whole breadth of hospitality and not having any of the big companies sitting outside the tent is immeasurably powerful. And that's what we've been able to say to those bigger companies is, you've really got to be with us, because otherwise we can't deliver. But more importantly, government really listens to the voice of independent small businesses. They're the powerful ones, and 80% of our membership and 80% of the sector is a small business. So it's not just saying Hilton, Whitbread, Mitchells and Butler, Casual Dining Group, Merlin. It's also saying, and 70,000 independent outlets that go along with it.
And how many businesses, so if you've got 700 members right now, what about the rest that haven't joined? What's wrong with them? We need to get them to join.
Well, absolutely. We have got, if you look at the main core components of hospitality in terms of pubs, restaurants, branded restaurants, I suppose, rather than independent, branded restaurants and hotels, we've got 90%. So to those other 10%, they need to join, they need to get behind us, and they need to support what we're doing. Yeah. It's the long tail of independence that we've also got behind that we need to reach out to. So it's a work in progress, and it doesn't stop. But hopefully success breeds success. And the more we can show that we're delivering really good value because we're focusing on the commercial issues that matter, we're having some successes at the budget in the Brexit negotiations with number 10, we're getting noticed, then hopefully the other businesses will see the value of being part of it. Yeah. And next year, because we can only do so much at one time, next year we'll also be developing membership services. So whether that's going and saying, okay, here's your template for diversity and inclusivity. Right. Here's what you can buy into for recycling and waste management and sustainability. Here's the guidance on trial shifts and national living wage enforcement, giving somebody something back tangible that says, this is what you get for being a member, adds to that value.
I think that's brilliant. Yeah, I think that'd be really good. And in terms of you then, yourself, if we go back a bit. So we're talking about history earlier on and being a historian, all these things. So how did you get here and how did you decide this was the calling in life?
Like so many people in our sector, I fell into it by accident. So I was a frustrated journalist. When I graduated, I had it all mapped out. It's the only time in my life I've ever had a plan was when I was about to graduate. I was going to be a journalist. I was going to go back home to Durham, going to work for the Newcastle Journal where I'd done all my work experience, etc. And I had a traineeship, a year's traineeship, doing the apprenticeship, mapped out and planned for me. And I was accepted. And I graduated 91. Which was a graduate recession. They cancelled all the traineeships and said, go away and get 1 year's worth of relevant experience and come back and we'll hold your place open.
Okay.
And I happened to see a job as a researcher in the European Parliament that was only for a year, and I never went back. So I sort of fell into politics and worked in the European Parliament and the House of Commons simultaneously, and did a lot of shuttling around between Brussels, Strasbourg and London, but had 3 years of really good grounding in politics and realised that's what I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
I was then working in Europe on a whole load of food regulations. They were looking at additives in food, colourings, flavourings, all those kind of things that we're going to ban numbers. And the European proposals would have stopped us having pink sausages, green beans, and most importantly, would have banned the prawn cocktail crisp. So my biggest claim to fame is that I saved the prawn cocktail crisp. And I also saved...
Thank you, by the way.
more importantly, caramel in beer and isinglass were two of the ones that were also going to be banned, at which point I was lobbied by virtually all of the brewing sector in the UK who came across because I was writing the report. And that's when Whitbread decided that they would recruit me to be in-house government relations.
Right.
And so that's how I fell into hospitality.
Okay.
So at the age of 24, I was with Whitbread advising the various boards on all the different hospitality issues and regulations. So I then combined my two passions, politics
prawn
and
cocktail
hospitality, prawn cocktail crisps, prosecco. It all has to rhyme with P, or start with P. And that's when I started working in hospitality, and I never left hospitality. So I've then been fortunate enough to do politics and hospitality for the last 20 years.
And what about Whitbread then? How did you find that? Because it's a very different beast then, I suppose, than it is now.
Yeah, well, that was back when they were primarily a brewer. So they had a large pub estate. They had the brewery.
In Chiswell Street.
In Chiswell Street.
Still running?
The brewery wasn't running, but that's where head office was.
Got it.
So that big clock you see when you walk in underneath the arch, my office was just above that. And it was run by Peter Jarvis and Michael Angus. Hotels were just starting. So David Thomas was there running Marriott. As I left, Premier Inn was just really taking off. Costa had just been established. So it was really at the infancy of it being a hospitality business. So I was there at that transformational stage. And my job was to interpret government regulations and changes in legislation and provide the advice to each of the divisional boards so that we could collate our information and feed it back to government.
Quite a lot of responsibility and seniority at that age as well, no?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
which is
sounds
probably
great.
why I've never really had... I mean, politics, hospitality and brewing and public affairs agencies, they're all very heavily male-dominated.
Right.
And I think that it just gave me... I was fortunate enough that my first boss at Whitbread was a fantastic champion, Simon Ward. He was a brilliant boss and an informal mentor. It just gave me the confidence that as long as you know what you're talking about, you have as much right as anybody else to be explaining. And if you are the expert, people respect you for your expertise. So I've never really found that anything like that's held me back.
No, good. That's, should be. And then from there, from Whitbread, what was the next step?
I went into public affairs agency, so I was a director of the largest independent public affairs agency, and I set up their retail, hospitality and social division and also competition, because I'd done a lot of mergers and acquisitions at Whitbread. And after 3 years of that, realised that I was the largest fee earner for the group and that therefore I should just do it myself.
Great.
So I set up my own business, which allowed me then, that's when I started working, that was just about 20 years ago, when I started working with ALMR. They were one of my clients for the first time. But it also allowed me to manage work and family. And that was the deliberate decision, was to go it alone, set up my own agency so that I could manage the kids at the same time.
Yes. Well, I think that was the dream for me starting my own business as well. I was thinking, yeah, I'll have a bit more time at home. Oh, not so much.
Doesn't quite work that way when you think about it. So somebody asked me the other week when it was a conversation similar to this about diversity and inclusivity and sort of maternity leave. And I think I had 3 weeks.
Really?
But I mean, I was then at home.
Yeah.
So it's just the fact of, that scary thought as a freelancer. When's your next piece of work going in? And I was fortunate that most of my work could be done either monitoring what was going on in Parliament, which can be done out of hours, or sitting writing strategic campaign plans. So I was not doing the execution. I was doing the strategy and telling somebody else how to manage it. Yeah. You can do it.
Yeah.
In and around times. It's more flexible than people think.
Well, we had Lizzie Barber from Cabana and Hashi and Hash and all that on the other week, and she's pregnant at the moment. And we were sort of joking about how much time, Jamie, who's her boss, but also her brother, would give her off. So we're kind of, going back and forth saying, long weekend maybe or something like that. See how it goes.
They're adaptable. You can carry them around with you. Yeah. I mean, it was Frank and Knowles who sort of took me to one side when I was pregnant and just sort of said, look, you can make it work and you have to be quite bolshy about it and you can bring them with you and just tell people that that's if they want your advice, again, back to your expertise, if they want your advice, this is how it works and this is what it comes with. Yeah. And just having that open upfront conversation. Yeah,
definitely. And I don't think it makes you any better or what. You're just going, look, this it's funny. Been speaking to a few people, like sort of lifestyle coachy type people, and they've been really good, sort of, giving advice in terms of say what you need. You say, look, I need this. Yeah. If that doesn't suit you, that's fine. Yeah, exactly. I think it's a good piece of advice to just.
And also, it's sort of. One of my mottos that I have at work that I try and push with the team is done is better than perfect. Mm-hmm. And again, it's that sort of principle of you can't do everything perfectly. Yes. So you have to accept that you're going to compromise. It's not in one thing or the other. Mm-hmm. You compromise across everything. Yeah. And compromise is okay. Yeah. And not being perfect at everything is okay. Yeah.
Well, I think there's a few things on that actually that's really good. When I worked at lastminute.com when I was a wee boy, Brent and Martha were there, and Brent always used to just be like, just get the page up. It will never be perfect. Yeah. The site will never be perfect. Just get it up. We'll see what the bugs are. We'll fix it. We'll keep, it's that whole kind of thing. Yeah. And also, for anyone, it's just like doubling down on your strengths and just realising what your weaknesses are as well. So if you've got that self-awareness, that's quite a good thing quite a humble thing and a vulnerable thing, which is quite good to show in management or leadership or whatever, and just say, I'm not good at that,
Yeah, and also, if you know what you're good at, play to your strengths and then recruit people who are better than you in the areas that either you don't like doing or you're not very good at. Sort of, that was one of the things that I found when I took over as chief executive for ALMR. We'd always had that the chief executive was the commercial one and the deputy was the person who looked after public affairs. Now, there's no point at all in me stopping doing public affairs. Yeah. That's where people need me as the outward face. And it's the same with UK Hospitality. So it's backfilling and creating the people, as I say, who are better than you at the things you don't like doing. Yeah.
And then just when you were talking about the freelancing thing, it's funny, I've been talking a lot to other agency owners like Mr. Mark Stretton and Mr. Wingett and all these people. And, that whole sort of freelance type thing, it is a bit feast or famine though, isn't it? Because you've either got too much work or you're worrying that you don't have enough work, and there's no middle.
No, there isn't a middle comfortable ground. No. But then I guess that's what we all probably like.
Yes.
If you're going to do that, it's the same in hospitality. We clearly do it and set up on our own because we're more entrepreneurial, because we're, I would argue, a bit more creative. Some might say it's just that we're a bit bolshy and too difficult to be managed.
Yes.
We don't fit into that corporate mould. So we create a mould for ourselves. Yeah. So we probably quite like that.
Yes.
But I had that anxiety a lot of, I daren't turn this job down because I might not get another one, or I might get a reputation of being the flaky person who doesn't deliver. Yeah. So you are a little bit feast or famine.
It's a tricky one. So then starting to work with ALMR. So back in the day, was Peter Martin involved at some point?
Peter Martin was vice president, and he helped to set up ALMR 1992. So it was Peter Martin and Peter Salusolia had the bright idea that at that time you didn't have a trade body that represented the new breed of entrepreneurial pub operators. So it was post beer orders. And the beer orders meant that the breweries had to sell their pubs.
Yeah.
And you could only be a member of the Brewers' Society, as it was then, if you were a brewer.
Okay.
So you suddenly had these groups of people who had 20 pubs. There was small local FLVAs for single-site operators, but there was nobody representing the multiples. And that was the gap in the market they spotted. And Peter Martin helped to create ALMR and is still involved as one of our vice presidents today, and is a huge giver of his time and a champion of the sector to make sure we've got the best trade representation we can.
Yeah. I always think of him as the John Peel of the industry sort of thing.
Yeah,
He's
absolutely.
that kind of, so, and also I think, I saw a picture of Richard Branson the other day and I thought, he's actually stealing Peter's look. He's kind of, he's kind of going across that way. I was like,
Well, at this time of year, I always look at the Coca-Cola bottles and think, there we go. There's Peter's look. It's been modelling again.
Yeah, definitely. So then, in terms of ALMR then, I mean, I first came across it, I guess, I'd have been at Yo's Sushi, I think. So, so I was head of marketing there, working with Robin and all that. And so that was when I was first kind of knowing about it, and maybe went to a few kind of the conferences, this and that. Christmas lunch, which is coming up, obviously.
Yeah.
So been lucky enough to be at a few of those. But so what kind of happened? So once you joined and got part of it?
Yeah, so the first 10 years of ALMR's life, it didn't really do much campaigning and lobbying. And I did a few little bits and pieces with it, sort of 98, 99, 2000, around drink driving, essentially.
Okay.
And it was only really when we got to 10 years in 2002 that they decided they really needed to focus much more. And it was licensing reform that really gave the impetus for having a proper campaigning arm and public affairs arm. And that's when I started to get properly involved, and it stopped being more about networking and events and became more serious and grown up. And at the time then, we, as a strategy, we were focused on small managed pub operators. We decided we would move away from that and we would focus on being the voice for the pub operator. We rapidly recruited Mitchells and Butler, Wetherspoons, those big operators. And then merged with BEDA. So we then got the late night. So the next logical step, which is probably when you got involved or heard about it, was, okay, so you've got the late night drinking and you've got the drinking venues. Pubs are moving more towards food anyway. The logical next step is casual dining, which was in its infancy. I think people forget how young the casual dining revolution on the high street is.
Yeah. And what would you say would be the day? I don't know. What would it be?
I would say about 2008.
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you had more mature brands.
Yeah.
So, Café Rouge, Bella, they were in my Whitbread days.
Yeah.
So, and Beefeater, I think, you had a lot of them that came out of the pub sector.
Yeah.
But if you're really talking about the casual dining revolution on the high street, I think it was the crash in around 2008-9. You had the first big retail recession and you had the Mary Portas review of the high street of who was going to save the high street. A lot of those companies were then able to get into those sites. So those planning permissions were opened up. In fact, my hometown of Ealing, a lot of the casual diners are in old retail outlets. So they would have been A1 at the time. And it's local authorities who then said, OK, you can turn this into an Itsu or a Pret or a Wagamama.
Yeah.
And, Wagamama's an old brand, but for a lot of the time it had 2 sites?
Yeah,
3 sites?
It didn't explode initially. And even Pret was the same. I mean, I think it was, 3 or 4 years before the second even opened after, Victoria Street.
So I would say you're looking at about 2008-9 that you start that process, and it's quite a revolution.
That was our Britpop sort of era. Yep. Well, it's getting tough out there now, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's tough on the high street. And, that's what, when we're talking to government, they sort of go, well, it's okay. Last time we had this crisis on the high street and we lost Woolworths and Whittards and all of that. Casual dining stepped in to save the high street. Well, casual dining is actually suffering as much, if not more, than retail. We're not able to save anybody else other than ourselves.
Yeah.
So unless government steps in, you're going to see quite a crash on the high street, and it's going to have an impact on consumers. Either they're going to have empty shops, or they're going to have the sort of charity shops that, the mix of charity shops and betting shops that they categorise as being an unhealthy high street, or consumers are going to pay for it in higher prices.
Yeah, I think there's, it's almost been attacked in all angles, right? Because you've got the disruptors and the last mile delivery and all that stuff that's disrupting it. Technology, online delivery, all that on top. That then people aren't going out into the high street. Then you've got the employee stuff's going to get tough. The rates are tough, So it's getting really tough out there. So we'll delve into that in a wee sec. But the other thing, just while we're on ALMR stuff, what were the sort of changes you saw just during that time as well?
In the industry or in ALMR?
Yeah, in
the industry. Yeah. I think it was that blurring of the distinctions between the subsectors. So when I started, people had an idea of what a restaurant was. It was tablecloths, it was silver service, or it was waitress service. Mm-hmm. Pubs were primarily about beer and were smoky. Yeah. Late night was where you went when you couldn't get a drink anywhere else, and you only went there because you wanted to continue drinking. Yeah. And it's that hybridization. Mm-hmm. And, I hate it as a phrase, but operators sweating the asset and making it different things to different customers at different times of the day. That's the biggest change, I think. Yeah. And, it's one of the things that frustrates me that the industry doesn't get the recognition it deserves for being as innovative and dynamic. It's constantly reinventing itself. Yeah. And it's reinventing itself more quickly than ever before because consumer taste is changing so much more quickly. And that's driven largely by social media as well. So we're better informed consumers. We're asking for more. We're open to more influencers. And the industry's always gone through cycles, but those cycles are getting faster and faster and faster.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really kind of has to. And I think in terms of that sort of sweating the asset thing and all the rest of it, boy, is it the number one brief that we get from everyone is, how can I be busy between, 3 p.m. and 6 p.m? And it's like, there's no diamond bullet or, anything or silver bullet or anything like that. No. I mean, it's hard because people are at work a lot of the time. How can I be busy at that time on a Tuesday?
Tricky
one.
People are using those assets differently and being a bit more creative. But, when you talk to government about productivity, which is what we've been talking to them about, that's their big mantra. How do you improve productivity? And they sort of beat the industry up because it's a low productivity sector, which it's bound to be because it's labour intensive. Mm-hmm. And, one of the ministers said to me, who's supposed to be quite well informed about this, French restaurants are so much more productive than British restaurants. Okay, well, we could be just as productive. French restaurants close in that dead part of the day. Yeah. They don't open for breakfast. They'll open for lunch and they close in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. We could be equally productive if we closed our restaurants, but that's not what the consumer wants. Yeah. And that's not what the government policy is to drive it. And equally, you'd create unemployment. So it's that catch-22 that government doesn't really get.
So what are they just saying? Hours traded versus size of stuff versus
revenue and hours and labour hours. So it's the same metric that's used for a factory to demonstrate how productive you are. So obviously, if you automate a factory or Amazon automates its warehouse picking and distribution, reduces the number of staff, its productivity improves. But you can't do that in our sector. Or you can't without sacrificing something. So you can't turn around to the Ritz and say, you could be so much more productive if you didn't have 40 people serving afternoon tea. Well, but the kind of customer that's at the Ritz demands that certain level of service. And, if you think back, so going back to what's changed in the industry, when I started working at Whitbread, we were just in that first wave of female-friendly bars. So all bar one and all of those kind of things. How are we going to do that? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we realised in order to make it more female-friendly was that you didn't always have to queue at the bar. You could sit, you could have a table service. All of that is adding additional cost and additional headcount. Yeah. You don't want to return back to having to queue at a bar. I'm not sure the customer would go for it necessarily. It feels,
that's a big one. I mean, it feels like you're commoditising what's done, which is not right. I don't know if it's I don't mean fair, but I don't know if it's a representative sum or formula, right?
It's not a good way of measuring and valuing a modern economy. And that's part of the problem. So time and time again, what you come up against is that they just don't get our sector, or people say that they don't value it and that the work is considered to be low skill because it's all these outdated assumptions that are placed upon it. So whether it's the business rates that are looking at bricks and mortar versus value in the business and a tax on the business, or it's this measure of productivity, it's just a 21st century economy being measured against 19th century definitions. So, a lot of the notions that civil servants have are around 9 to 5, clocking in, clocking out. It works for that kind of sector. It doesn't work for ours.
Yeah.
And that's why it suddenly becomes to be seen to be low value when it's not.
No, definitely. God, that's quite a big one, actually. That's going to be turning
Sorry.
over in my mind as well.
This was supposed to be a little light chat,
No,
wasn't it?
it's good though, because I don't realise these things. If they're measuring it in pounds, shillings and pence, but actually you're about, I don't know, velocity, it's completely different.
Yeah, and that's why I always say our role is with a figure of 8. So you've got information flowing through from politicians to the industry and back again. And our bit is the critical bit in the middle that does the simultaneous translation, so you can turn it into something that's understandable because it's, comes out of government in its Mandarin and it needs to be translated into something commercial.
Yeah.
And that's where we're adding value and making sure that both sides understand and can have an actual conversation and dialogue rather than just shouting at each other.
Yeah. And also, it's quite interesting, I think, in terms of the demographic, potentially, a lot of people who are making these judgments in government, for example, or in the media, probably wouldn't eat, maybe, and some of the people that we represent.
Yeah.
And, so there's a complete class issue as well, potentially, too.
Yes.
It's just tough to try and get that across.
Yeah, and obviously no disrespect to any of them, but usually if you're working in the media or you're in politics or you're in the civil service, you're usually at a certain level standard of education. You probably have only ever thought of our industry as a summer job, if you've thought of it at all.
Yeah. So then from there, there's the new birth, the butterfly caterpillar analogy. So UK Hospitality happened. And thinking about it, you've got like a figure of 8 thing going on, have you, within the logo?
Yeah, slightly.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
Trying to capture that.
So that was just then seeing that the sort of boat that everyone was in was maybe getting a bit too creaky and a bit too big, that you needed a new platform.
Well, it was... Both boards wanted us to try and be more collaborative. So you had BHA that was hotels, contract catering, fine dining, ALMR that was eating and drinking out more broadly, and often found ourselves competing for share of voice or competing for space around the government's table.
Yeah.
And the breakthrough really came when George Osborne pulled a rabbit out of a hat and announced national living wage, where the two boards said, can we work together on a joint piece of research to look at what it means across the industry? And we did that, and it had an impact. And we could see that going in jointly and lobbying together as one bit for the industry meant that we got to the top table. We were meeting the Chancellor. They were listening to what we were saying, and we were changing government policy. So probably about this time last year, they sat down and thought about how they could do it more effectively on a longer term basis, and actually realised the issues were identical. There was no point in discussing a memorandum of understanding as to how to cooperate. We should just merge and create one body. So it's been quite a year.
Yeah. Oh, it's fabulous. And then a big celebration soon at the Christmas lunch.
Yes.
So that always feels good.
Well, I think it's a unique industry event because it's the only industry event that is explicitly about celebrating our industry for the breadth that we represent. It's not a big speech session. It's not a big presentation. It is an end of term celebration, and it has that feel about it. And I think that's what people like. So you can guarantee you're going to catch up with a whole load of friends. You're going to feel good about what we're doing. And at times like this, where it is difficult, coming together and celebrating the good matters. And it's also about giving the value that we know we all have, but expressing that loudly with 1,300 people.
Is that how many it is?
Yeah.
Jeez.
It's the biggest industry event.
Yeah. And any clues on the star this year?
Can't tell you.
I always love to know. Always love to know. So in the past, though, you've had
Dara O'Brien, Jimmy Carr, Giles Brandreth, Ed Byrne. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it is, and I think this year as well, I think it will feel like it'll be a bigger celebration because it's closer to Christmas than it's ever been, I think. And then the second thing is, I think there'll be a lot of relieved people in the room.
And have got through the year.
Just have got through the year. It's been a tough year.
It has been really hard.
And really I think everyone deserves that.
And at the time when it is hard, that's when you really get the value of a membership organisation, because you don't feel that you're alone. You can talk to somebody else who's going through it. You can talk to somebody who might be able to help you. And as you say, you can come together. And we've always deliberately chosen it the last Thursday before Christmas. So it is effectively the last working day.
Yeah.
Nobody does anything on a Friday.
Not so much. Not that Friday.
So this is the closest that it gets, really.
Yeah.
So we are missing a few faces because they've already gone on leave,
yes.
but you can't have everybody in the room. But, and this year, of course, we'll have a large number of hotels, contract caterers, visitor attractions, cafe, grab and go. So the diversity of membership has increased significantly, and it's been really humbling to have a large number of companies who've joined because we've come together.
Yeah.
So we have had some big wins this year where we've attracted members who've never been members before.
Yeah.
Young's, Centre Parks, Pret, companies that have not joined either are suddenly seeing that it's a real value to be together.
Being part of it. That's great. I think that's going to be amazing. I'm very, very much looking forward to it.
Nice try on getting the name of the speaker, though.
Oh, I really want to know. I just because I'm so, music and comedy are my two things. So anyway, we'll see. I'll maybe send you a few suggestions or bets.
Okay.
And see how we get on. And I'll tickle it out of Stretton.
I'm not even sure he knows.
I might not know. Because we're doing a drunk podcast.
I saw the 3 marks.
3 wise marks.
Yeah.
So that's in a couple of weeks. So So drink
well, if you need
responsibly.
some hospitality to sustain you throughout it, I'll happily provide it.
Yes, that'd be great. Well, I'll give you a shout about that. So then, getting into UK hospitality, then, what's your sort of vision of in terms of what would you say to people when they're why they should be joining and what you're setting out to be?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I was coming on the podcast, I was thinking actually that a lot of what we do is very similar to marketing, and is very similar to the kind of disciplines that you look at when you're doing that marketing activity. So, when I took over, I was very clear that, yes, we had to be a good campaigning voice, but that was not the only thing we had to be. And the most important thing that we did as a job was to promote the reputation of the sector as a great place to work, a great place to invest, a place that people can grow either their business or themselves personally. But it's about promoting the reputation of the sector. And the other side of that is a good corporate citizen. So in marketing terms, it's quite challenging because you've got 3 different distinct audiences that need to hear that message, and you're going to be splitting it, but you need to make sure you've got a consistent, cohesive message that unites everybody. So, whether that's customers, potential employees, media, politicians, etc. The second one then is that really strong campaigning voice, making sure that we're really focused on the commercial issues that matter to the bottom line. At the moment, that's particularly around driving down costs, but it could be about promoting opportunities, or it could be looking for changing the legislation in a deregulatory way, not at the present moment in time, because Brexit's sucking all that oxygen, but down pressure on costs. And then the third bit, which is really important, is about making sure you've got value-added membership services. So you've got 3 core reasons as to why somebody might want to join. And those membership services, they're still a work in progress. But it's about making sure that people have a friendly support network of experts. And it's an ethos that we had at the start in ALMR, was that if we didn't know the answer to a question within my team, we knew a person who could. And we would leverage all the vital supplier associate members who are in the association to give people either discounted services or the benefit of free advice. And so we're developing that suite of services that members can access that gives them something tangible.
I think it sounds really good, and I think that third one is so interesting because when we were starting our small business, when we were starting the agency, it was really handy to have. There was quite a few sort of low subscription things where you'd go to, and it was like, right, what's your supplier NDA template. So I think that's a superb idea to have those kind of things.
And it goes back to your question about how do you get the rest of the people to join in.
Yeah.
For those independents, they've got to see a return on their investment. And it's great that we can talk about business rates and all that kind of stuff, but they need something tangible that says, for my X amount of pounds, this is what I've got: legal helplines, templates for contracts, employment law issues and support. So it's really making sure that we've got all of those nailed down so we can go out. But those three components: protect, promote, prevent.
I think that's brilliant. Again, back to your piece. There's a pizza and pints in there.
Yeah, somewhere. There is. Maybe I'm a frustrated marketeer.
Maybe, God, aren't we all? But I think I think that development part, the promote part, is just really interesting as well. In terms of sort of e-learning and getting people like digital savvy. Because I think I commented on something the other week. I can't remember what it was, but anyway. What they were saying was, when you open I know what it was. I saw a thing on the news, I ended up talking about it, I think it was Adnams or something. It was in Southwold High Street.
Okay.
And a small baker's had opened, and already the lady was sort of, just a bit kind of moaning about my rates are going up, and you're like, well, they are. But that's something you can't directly control. So my thought was, you've went into this with your eyes closed a little bit, in the sense of, I don't think you can just run a shop anymore, or just run a restaurant anymore, or I think you need to be looking at, all the verticals round about. Yeah. So what's your e-com strategy, and what's your social media strategy to drive sales, and what are all the, all these other things. But yeah, just any, help, training, advice, on that stuff, it would be amazing for these people.
Well, that's the kind of thing we're moving towards, and working with some partners who can deliver that as well. Because I think, back to the government's productivity point, one of the things that we don't do as well in the independent side of the business is really giving people the training to manage and giving the training to lead.
Yes.
And I think that would help, as well as the digital skills, because there's a lot of small businesses out there that just haven't lifted their head above the trough and looked at it. And as a sector, we're not very good at getting on the front foot. So a lot of what we want to do is to make sure that we're on the front foot, talking about what we're doing and the good things that we're doing, because we've got some fantastic initiatives, whether that's recycling, disability, LGBT. There's lots and lots of positive charters that are out there, or initiatives that individual workers, employers have done. We don't group them together and say, this is what it's good looks like when you're an employer. Yeah. And this is what you should expect. And this is why we're good. And this is what we invest back in our community. So whether it's talking about CSR or employment or regeneration or good corporate citizen, if we were just on the front foot a little bit more, when government got some of the negative messages, whether that's from the unions about tips, or it's about somebody talking about food waste or whatever, or calories, then they might be prepared to push back on our behalf. And that's what the supermarkets have been really clever at doing over the last 15, 20 years. And we've been playing catch up. Yeah,
and it's something, funnily enough, I've just done another podcast this morning, and that was something we were talking about, was how can we act as the hospitality industry? How can we act as e-tailers? I know it's a wanky phrase, but it's just, but how can we look at that? So start with digital first in mind, as if you are M&S Next, River Island, ASOS, name your thing, Amazon, but flipping it on its head slightly. And actually sitting down and saying, right, I know we've got a restaurant, but what about where the real eyes and ears and clicks are?
Yes.
First.
And because that's back. How are we going to attract? If you talk to any operator, their first question is, how are we going to attract the workforce of the future? Yeah. And how are we going to attract the customers of the future? Because we know that, particularly in certain parts of the sector, people come out later, or pub goers are getting older, and young people don't find it as much. To me, they're two sides of the same coin. The reason that you're not attracting the younger people in is that they're not coming into the outlets where they think of as being good quality or good aspirational. Yep. And you've got to be thinking about the way the 13 to 16-year-olds are thinking about accessing your brand. Yeah. And they are quite brand conscious. Even if it's an anti-brand, if they are sort of slightly independent and go for the anything but the brand, they're either into Nando's or, Wagamama or whatever the brand is, or they want the anti-establishment version of it because it's independent. But, I've got a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old, so I find it quite interesting. They love Deliveroo. It never replaces eating out. They love eating out. They particularly love walking down a high street and asking if I know the person who owns that premises. But my 16-year-old, if we turn up in a new city and we don't know where we're going and she wants to know where to go out to eat, her first thing to do is to go on Deliveroo. She doesn't deliver to the hotel yet, but that's how she gauges where it is. Is that brand online? And I don't think brands are thinking that way.
No.
And the other thing that people are not thinking about is voice technology. You know, for the 13 to 16-year-olds, they ask Alexa all the time. And unless you've got something that is logging on and making sure that you've got that recommendation, then Alexa is just going to pull it from whoever is paying Google the most.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've talked about voice on this podcast quite a bit, and it's exciting, I think. And so there's a few bits to it. I believe, certainly in the US, if it's not the UK, I think some of Alexa stuff's coming from Yelp, weirdly.
Yeah.
And then actually when it's coming through, so it's weird. We are beating ourselves up for not being voice, but actually Alexa's not the full package yet, which is quite super
but we
interesting.
need to be ahead of
least,
that.
yeah.
So many times the restaurant sector in particular talks about, how did Deliveroo happen? Well, we let it happen. We let somebody else develop a technology, and they were ahead of us.
Yeah.
And they were then ahead of our customers.
Yeah.
And that's where I think you've got the potential to do something different with voice. And also you've still got restaurateurs who are bemoaning TripAdvisor. And the way, and hotels will bemoan online travel agents as well. And yes, there's a lot of abuse on there. And yes, those companies don't take full responsibility. But that's what's going to drive all of that content that's coming through on voice. And so you've got to be with it and you've got to be engaged in it.
So I don't get this at all. So it's been the last few podcasts we've talked about, but people saying I don't read TripAdvisor, you're like, are you out of your mind? You can be as arrogant and ego-driven as you like, but some truth's on there.
Yeah.
And if someone thinks you smell, it would be quite good if you knew about it and you didn't.
You're trying to tell me something.
No, not at all. I think there's a glade in here somewhere. But so there's that part of things I think's incredible. I know there's some people doing well and they don't need to and whatnot or whatever. But I question that. I think the voice thing, I think you're right. I think there's a chance for people to leapfrog this. Yeah. And it's not that you don't take care of everything else, but you could start looking at, so for example, you're talking about attracting and recruiting and retaining as well the best talent. So thoughts are, can you use voice to be the first people that you can hire, you can get a job through Alexa?
And also when they are there coming into your premises as a customer, what are you doing to promote the kind of messages they need to hear as a young millennial?
Yeah.
Because lots of them haven't worked out where they want to work, but we're not showing them anything necessarily to showcase us at our best. We focused for a lot of the time on the solutions that we have in place for taking people who the formal education system has left behind or failed, which is great. But I actually want to get us to the next stage where we're appealing to those aspirational 16-year-olds like my daughter, not to say don't go to university, which is part of the message at the moment, but to say when you come out of university, this is where you can go. This is the breadth of experience we've got in hospitality, because guarantee you'll have more fun. And
you can get high young.
Absolutely.
As well,
absolutely. You can rapidly start. So I was talking to somebody yesterday whose son is a very high IQ but slightly autistic. Doesn't want to go to university, even though he could. And I said to her, well, have you not thought about hospitality? Because within 2 years, he could be a manager and he could be running his own restaurant and running his own business, or a hotel GM. And that's what we need to be focusing on, is those aspirational young people. And we forget that when they're our customer, they're also our potential employee.
Definitely. And I think I would really implore anyone to just get in touch with you to then help promote this perception. Because we're getting a lot of calls at the moment for employee engagement, and it's part of my old life. So I did it at lastminute.com and Barclaycard and a few other places, and it's kind of coming back round again because of everything that's happening.
It is. And it's partly the pressure of Brexit and the pressure cooker that is. But yeah, if anybody feels passionately about it, then we've just won the first round in getting government sector deal recognition. So sector deal is part of the industrial strategy. It's the government backing sectors of the economy that it thinks are jobs of the future economic growth. Yeah. So if we secure it and we win it, that will be government backing us and giving a big thumbs up to hospitality and giving us the credibility that we've never had before. So everything that we've asked for in terms of recognition, reward, appreciation. It will also be a huge stick that we can come back to them to say, well, okay, you recognise us as a future economic leader, but you're hampering us with all of these red tape and taxes, etc. Yeah. So it's a big win-win for the industry. A large part of that sector deal will be government backing a national recruitment campaign that we will be leading as employers to go out to young people and to promote us as a career of choice. Yep. And the Scottish Government's also agreed that they will back us as a career of choice. So if you've got government saying this is a great place to have a career, we need employers to make that happen and work with us. And another part of it will be skills and upskilling people. Yep. So we will have a 3-year plan launched next year, touch wood, if government endorses it, that takes us forward and drives us forward and does what we've been talking about for so long, but have not delivered, which is to change the perception of the sector.
It's huge. And I think it's that mum and dad part. Yeah. And we spoke to Jonathan from Red Carnation Hotels the other week on the podcast, and he was saying he went to like a school fair. Yeah. And basically, his desk was empty and everyone was at the stockbrokers or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think it'll take some time, but I think, we could crack it together. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I think it's all of us sort of pushing, because although I'm not in proper hospitality, I suppose, we've landed the business in hospitality. Yeah. And that's part of it. There's the main part, there's augmented parts, there's, vertical bit, so I think there's so much possibility.
But as you said, you worked at Yo Sushi. Now, if you said to people mums and dads working at Yo Sushi, they will think of basic level. If they think skilled, they'll think of the fish filleting skills.
Yeah, wasn't so good at that.
No,
lots
none
of blue plasters.
But there is more to Yo Sushi than just the serving and the cooking. Yep. And that's what we need to communicate. It's a bit like that. Do you remember that army campaign? Yes. Where they would do you can be this, you can be that. And we need to talk about marketing, accountancy, web design. If you think about what's happening in the digital space in hospitality, if you're a graphic designer, you should be working in hospitality. Builders, and I had that conversation with Department of Work and Pensions, where they said, well, we'll do hospitality week. And then we've got all these other weeks of other careers. And I said, well, why are you not promoting hospitality in all those other bits of the careers? Because you can do all of those jobs in hospitality. Yeah.
And there's, sexy stuff too, like being a brewer. And being a coffee roaster, and I mean, international opportunities are so big. Yeah. The hotel stuff, and I think you've even got to just watch. I think the Corinthia doing a great job. Yeah. Getting on TV and doing that stuff.
Yeah. Well, somebody said to me, as part of this sector deal, should we not be doing our own TV adverts? It's like, sure, really, but what could you have better than the fantastic hotel programs and the chef programs? You've got more than anything, MasterChef, the professionals, you've got the Corinthia, you've got all of those that are promoting what we do. It's just taking it to the next level.
But I think it's taking that content, and then maybe not TV as such in terms of traditional sense, because the people you're trying to attract aren't there, but making content and TV shows and TV ads type thing and putting it online. So for example, you would have a weekly thing where it's even like lateral stuff like Undercover Boss. Yes. It just helps that thing. So I think there's definitely a content play.
There is.
And I think it's about topping and tailing it. So for everyone that views the Corinthia TV show, how could you then get to those viewers? So if it's on the BBC, so I initially went, oh yeah, we could top and tail it if it's on ITV, of course it's BBC. So how could you then, so everyone that likes, that on, or comments on it on Facebook, you could then hit them up. There's all these different things. Yeah. What I was surprised at, and I hope they don't mind me saying, is they haven't posted about it at all in their digital channels.
Have they not?
Well, certainly not on Insta.
I would have thought they would have.
So I might be missing something.
Maybe they're not thinking of it as the target market. That's the thing, you see. That goes back to, what are you doing your social media for? And I think a lot of brands think of that about this. They are communicating to the people they want to come into their premises and be their consumers. So they're possibly at the hotel thinking that the kind of clients they want to attract are not the ones that are watching the television programme or on Instagram. But you're forgetting that you've got this whole other audience that's looking at what you're doing.
Well, again, it could be turned into a recruitment campaign. It could be turned... Because if you saw the wee fella that was 16... and he goes out and he's in the Jaguar and he's feeling all cool when he's going to Harrods to pick up a Tom Ford suit or whatever. And I just questioned that bit. And also, I would like to think that on somewhere like Insta or social in general, I think there's still a chance, just the marketer in me, there's still a chance that someone would aspire to, because some of that audience is going to see the Corinthia and go for a meal at Kerridge's. Some of that audience is going to go along and have afternoon tea. Some of the audience is maybe going to have a big occasion and want that room with the pink balloons.
Yeah.
You know?
I agree with you, they're missing out on it.
Yeah.
But I think it is...
Unless I've read it wrong. But I looked through and I was like, I don't see anything about a TV show on here. I was like, I mean, even if they did it in a more classy way, where it's some good clips of who's there, or even just show around the thing. There's a clip talking about beautiful bedrooms and all this stuff.
Was that the one with the housekeeper?
Yeah,
I just thought that was amazing. Her quote about, I came to this country and this hotel has given me a job, it's given me a life, it's embraced me, and you think that's what our sector does. And they're all unsung heroes, so it's nice to see them getting some recognition, but we need to push that out. So this is what we want to work on for the next year, is this multimedia focus that it's talking to consumers, it's talking to the general public, it's just that general education piece, so we broaden people's minds.
And I think it's probably laying out like a millennial campaign, centennial campaign, and then starting to turn minds to Gen A, which is, even not kind of almost here yet, but, just looking at that. And I met a wonderful chap the other day, I think he's going to come on this at some point, and he was the world's, if not Europe's, youngest CEO ever. And he was 13, he's now 18.
Wow.
And his name is Brandon Relf, and he was at a TEDx thing, and he was speaking. He was at Brighton one, which is like the sort of biggest TEDx, I think, certainly in Europe. So anyway, chatting away, telling his story and all this. So he sold the company, and he's bought it back. Now he's doing all these things, but he's positioning himself as like the foremost speaker and person for Centennial. For Centennial. So quite interesting.
Yeah.
Quite interesting. But it's those kind of minds that I guess we all need to work with to hack.
We do, and we need to
future,
we need to sit inside their brains and understand what motivates them, because too much of when we talk about careers in the sector, too much of it is around the negative.
Yeah.
And it's long hours, or it's hard work, or you're on your feet, or people are shouting at you if you get the perception of what the kitchen is like.
Yeah.
Rather than it can be flexible. You can have a multiple career, which is what a lot of millennials and centennials are looking for, plurality. We tend to think of plurality as being the Robin Rowlands of this world who've got to a certain stage and then go plural. But actually, the younger generation are wanting
I thought for a moment you were going to say there's two Robin Rowlands.
No. No, sorry. Sorry to disappoint you.
One was loads.
I was going to say, one has got enough energy for two.
Oh my God, he's quite a man.
But they want to be able to do the vlogging and the artistic side and creative side and have a career at the same time. We offer that. Back to your point about how quickly can you rise up through the ranks. We need to talk to them about how young you can be to be in charge of your own restaurant and what you can earn. Because, within a couple of years, at early 20s, you can be earning more than a teacher, solicitor. Talk about the cars that you drive. Talk about the holidays that people have gone on.
Yeah, the Insta life.
That's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
That's what they're looking for.
Was it the Joneses, as Gary Vaynerchuk talks about, keeping up with the Joneses. Doing that whole thing. So in terms of sector challenges, we've covered quite a few, but what's going on with you? What's the main challenges that you're focusing on at the moment?
Brexit is dominating everything else. at the current moment in time. It is the most intense thing.
When will it go? When will it die? It's like a horror movie. Yeah.
Never. It is Hotel California.
Yes.
That's how it feels. And back to the start of my career, when I was in the European Parliament, I was doing the Maastricht negotiations. So I feel as though I've come full circle slightly. So, I mean, at the moment, the intense focus is on the immigration policy and how that just doesn't work for hospitality. It doesn't work for lots of companies in lots of sectors, but a 30k cap and a focus on high skills versus low skills just isn't going to work for our sector post-Brexit. So that's the big focus of activity. At the same time as talking about what does the deal look like, the government's deal? Is it a good deal? Is it a bad deal? And what do we do about no deal? So an awful lot of time at the moment is spent no deal contingency planning. So it's eating up management time. It's eating up any headspace, both in the government and in business, for something that may never come about, hopefully, touch wood. But if it came about, would be catastrophic.
Yeah, it's worrying times, and even as a bystander, really, I mean, in terms of me, you're just thinking, no one's happy.
Yeah, but, I always want to look for silver linings.
Yeah.
It's a real testament to the power of coming together and creating UK hospitality that, last week my diary was completely trashed. I was in Downing Street 3 times.
Saw your post.
With the Prime Minister and the Chancellor. Then I was in with Michael Gove. One of my team was in with the Prime Minister's officials and had a phone call from Michael Gove saying, we've got to have UK hospitality at the meeting. So, all of those kind of things. So I think 3 times in Downing Street, I met 5 Secretaries of State Cabinet Ministers and 10 junior ministers last week, with them coming to us to ask for solutions and ask for input. And, that really is a testament to how crucial and integral the industry has made itself into government policy and government thinking. That, previously, I think if we'd been talking about it, we would have been rattling the gates of Downing Street and saying, please, can we come in and talk to you because we think we're important? And we would have had an answer back that we don't think you're important necessarily. So, that is a testament to how far we've come in a relatively short period of time in getting the industry recognised and name-checked as one of the industries that is at the forefront of grappling with this challenge.
It sounds great. I mean, it must, like, as a KPI, as you sitting, X many years ago, that was probably one of the boxes you were wanting to tick.
I'd really rather we weren't going in when it's such potentially catastrophic news. That's the problem. But hopefully we can get there and turn it around and make sure that it's all right so that the industry, we are a very resilient industry. It's something that we are known for within government. We're known to be pragmatic as well, and we're known to be able to continue to roll with it and try and do our best. So, sometimes that plays against us, but in these cases, it's powering on through and trying to make sure we deliver. Yeah.
And then, just on a personal note, do you not get worried meeting like these government politicians and stuff? Because they're kind
Am I intimidated by them?
They're the rock stars of your world, aren't they? A little bit? I don't know.
Slightly, but it's quite interesting that they get starstruck by some of the people that are every day in our world.
Okay.
So, they quite like meeting leading CEOs and big figures. Okay. And, they see them as quite important. But also, I suppose, because I've been doing it since I was 21, I'm not really that starstruck by it. And probably the moment, everybody has that kind of moment. My mum was a teacher and she said she used to think that headmasters were, a cut above. And then my dad became a headmaster and she realised they were just normal.
Yeah.
She also then said to me the same thing about, she said, I used to think that people who got into Cambridge must be somebody totally different from our mindset. And then you got in and I realised it's just ordinary. Cheers, Mum.
Thanks.
But I was at university with Andy Burnham.
Right.
And it's when you've got somebody who was your contemporary who you knew was just a normal, everyday, really nice bloke, and they become a cabinet minister or they become the mayor, then you just realise they're just normal people and they're trying their best. I don't think there's many politicians who have an ulterior motive. There are some, but most of them are just trying their best to do the right thing with a limited amount of understanding, and they're reliant upon us as industry to go in and explain to them what it means in practice. And we can, complain to our heart's content about how they should really understand things more. But, we all understand our own world, and we've got to explain, and sometimes they just don't get it about commerce and business in general or our sector in particular, but we've just got to redouble our efforts.
Yeah, I mean, I think at my school, one of the boys, I think he's in the House of Lords now. I think he became a CBE or something like this. Yeah, from a really working class wee. Yeah. So yeah, he's done well. But yeah, I think on that note, in terms of doubling the efforts, I always see it like football in terms of if the ref's given a penalty, a lot of the time there's not much you can do about it, but the odd time, and I think the advantage you've got is that it is that debating society in terms of you can put your points forward, and hopefully over time that'll etch away.
And again, when you come together as a big group, you've got some pretty impressive business people around our table that they do want to meet. That might be Fred from First Dates at Galvin at Windows, or the West One Hotel Group. There's a group of the hoteliers that get together, and that I was more intimidated by that than I was about going in and meeting the politicians, because politicians are my world. But when you go and meet Mr. Goring and the person who runs the Ritz, and these are big, important people. And when I took the minister to go and have lunch with them for the first time, he was more overwhelmed by that than they were about meeting a minister. So it's all relative.
No, I suppose you're right. I just always
get more excited now about, I'm suddenly going into the Dorchester or, those kind of places that you don't normally get to go to, or secret bits in the Shard.
Oh, I haven't been up the Shard yet. I need to do that.
You should do that, definitely.
Need to get that sorted out. So just before I let you go, because I know you're super busy, there was a couple of fun things on the branding of hospitality in the UK, so in TV and things like that. So £1 million menu, and our £1 million menu, yes, £1 million menu. First date, smash it. I think and the Corinthia programme again, we're getting good support, aren't we? It's feeling sexy.
We are. I don't think we've ever had such a good profile on television as we've had at this moment in time. And actually the programmes are all focused on the skills. Whether they're the soft skills of hospitality and how it's done, or the sharp skills of the chefs. These are people at the top of their game. And the Giles Corran and the Monica programme, where they go to the best hotels in the world.
That was fun.
It's a great show of where you can go. If you are the person sitting in your bedroom and you're not quite sure what to do with your life, and you look, the television is giving you examples better than any of us could about the opportunities that hospitality can give you. And that's what we've just got to keep. We've got to pull it all together. We've got to distill it so that we've got a core message. And then every single person who works in hospitality needs to be equipped to go out and sell it. We've got 3 million ambassadors in our sector. Together, we can make a real difference to the way we are perceived.
I think, you're right that one campaign, it's almost that Be the Best or whatever it was with the Navy and the Army and all that jazz. I think there's definitely something needs happening there. That'd be an exciting brief. That'd be cool.
Oh, we'll come back and talk to you then.
Give us a shout. Give us a shout. And then I mean, I think we've managed to cover the B word.
Skate over it.
And we've done the history bit, we've done the sector bit and the rest of it. I guess the last thing I would sort of say is, what advice would you give to people, maybe starting out in the sector, but maybe who are finding it a bit tough as well? What would you say to them to give them some help and inspiration?
If they're on the business side, I would say join a trade association. I know I would say that, but it's quite lonely running your own business and being on your own. And there's no need for anybody to be on their own and to be struggling. There's somebody who will have invented that wheel before you and will have found the mistakes. So you can learn from it. If you're an individual working in the sector, I think it's again, there are lots of places out there for finding useful information and advice. There's mentoring programs that we've just set up. The one we've set up is particularly to do with women who are looking to make a progress. But there are also some fantastic programs for women returners, for young people who want mentoring. Get that kind of advice and support from somebody else. Nobody needs to be on their own in this sector. And the thing that differentiates hospitality from every other business sector that I've worked with, we are so much more open, collaborative and supportive than anywhere else. When I've looked at retail, when I've looked at manufacturing, house building, etc., they don't cooperate. No. We share, and everybody that you can approach usually is really quite friendly.
Yes.
And if you pick up the phone to anybody and ask for help, somebody is going to give it to you. Whether that's Jonathan Downey, who's going to help because you do street food or something like that, or one of the other companies. But there's loads of help and support out there. So go and access it. Find people. Talk to them.
Yeah.
We're a people industry.
Well, I think I can definitely back that up. I worked in travel and banking and all these things. And it's what made me stay here was the friendliness and the openness. And we were all in it to help get people to eat and drink out. Yeah. Basically, and stay, obviously.
But our biggest competition is not ourselves. No. It's the sofa.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's why, people talk about Deliveroo or talk about Airbnb. Actually, those are gateways for people to come into hospitality and to start, because eventually they'll trade up.
Yeah.
And it gets them into the habit of doing something else and going out. And that's what I say, if they eat in Café Rouge one day, they're going to eat in Pizza Express the next, or Yo Sushi. So it all goes around. We all share it. So we might as well cooperate and collaborate to make the high street and the customer experience a better experience. And actually, we don't sell products. We sell experiences. And so that's the point of difference, is your people, or how you train them, your culture, and the way that they engage with you. And that's what makes people come back. And it's what makes people choose you rather than somebody else. So we don't have to compete.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. So you're saying the war is against DFS?
Yes. Destroying all those sofas.
Okay. Well, Kate, listen, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
It's been fascinating. And I wish you well for 2019 and beyond.
Thank you. And I'll see you at Christmas lunch.
You will. I'll be there.
Excellent.
Thanks, Kate. Cheers.
Take care.
So there you have it, the incredible Kate Nicholls on top form, the CEO of UKHospitality, and hopefully that's some great insight into what the organisation does every day, what Kate does, where we are headed as an industry as well, and also what we can all do together to have a louder voice to lobby for change that will really help all of our businesses and, at the end of the day, all of our people and our customers every single day. A huge thanks also to everyone who's subscribed, reviewed, rated, and told that one friend about the Spectacular Marketing Podcast. We're so grateful and so happy that we're ending up in the top 100 most weeks for the business iTunes charts, and also Spotify's growing, YouTube's growing, and hopefully the video edition has been something welcome to you also. A huge thanks lastly to Gaz and Gabby for all of their hard work in terms of the exec production of the Spectacular Marketing Podcast. I'm Mark McCulloch, and this was Spectacular.